Like it's
yeah, totally.
Like it's
a little different.
It's a little different. You know, there's a sort of risk assessment that can be involved. It's like, okay, is there a potential danger to myself, to others, or to, you know, my environment by me doing this? And if it's no, then just just go for it.
Right.
If it's like, okay, there is a potential risk, there's a potential danger, then maybe take a moment to think everything really well through. I'm not going to say stop, because I don't think you should, because when we sit on our curiosities, I think we just start to kill ourselves a little bit. It's just like a weird way of just robbing ourselves of living really vibrant lives.
This is Way of the Artist with Brandon Colby Cook and Evan Schulte.
Identifying your blocks and demystifying your struggles
so that you can claim your own path
and make your life a work of art.
Welcome to a podcast, people. This is Brandon and Evan, and we're talking about some stuff. We're talking about curiosity. We're talking about how curiosity actually can open up doors, lead you down new paths, create motivation, and we're also going to talk about how we rationalize ourselves out of curiosity and why that actually stifles us, why that gets in the way. I think this is going to be really cool.
Yeah, there's a lot to explore with this one. It's related to a number of our laws. Just to list off the ones that jump to mind right off the bat: the law of the unknown, the law of play, the law of trust, the law of presence, the law of process, and the law of experience. So if you're more interested in some of those laws, you can look back at some of our other episodes. But we'll kind of get into some of them here, start to understand how they relate to curiosity as we go on. But this is this one kind of just jumped out at us today.
Yeah, it came pretty quick.
Yeah, it's just I wasn't thinking about it necessarily, but it just kind of came up, and they're like, yeah, curiosity. Let's do one on that. Seems nice and juicy.
Well, curiosity has been a very interesting thing for me as an artist, and just as a person in life. But I think as an artist, you sometimes see this stuff kind of, you know, because maybe you consider it, because everything's not so predetermined. You know, living as an artist, you know, you don't necessarily go to the same job every day. You know, one day, like, I'm on this set, another day I'm on that set, another day I'm not even on set, I'm writing, you know, because I do a variation of jobs.
You're in the privacy of your own
workspace
or home, whatever it is.
Right. And when you're creative, you know, you can get kind of, you know, you take on a new project, it's an entirely new thing. So you're constantly kind of expected, at least if you're in the creative side of the film industry, for me, where you're expected to kind of be curious and to kind of ask questions and to wonder, you know, and it kind of becomes a second nature. You almost do it without even realizing you're doing it. But I have had the experience of stifling my creativity, and the downsides of that were actually pretty bad. Like, all of a sudden I was like not motivated. My world seemed smaller. Things felt more limited. Things seemed less possible.
Yeah.
The big thing about curiosity I found is that because you look into things that you don't necessarily know where they'll lead, you walk down that path a little bit and it opens up another door that you never even knew existed. But you had to be curious about something to get to that door.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it from the place you were in. So curiosity is like the only way sometimes to see another way.
Yeah. And I think that something I want to confront right off the top here is our attitudes towards curiosity. A lot of times curiosity, I think, and this is just, maybe I'm projecting onto this, but we'll see. But oftentimes curiosity is kind of, I've almost been conditioned to think that it can be a frivolous thing. You know, curiosity is really not that important, or curiosity is something that's not an adult thing. That's something kids are curious, but when you're an adult, you got to get serious, and you know, you've got to just accept hard realities or some such nonsense like that. But curiosity is such a powerful thing for us to nurture in our lives, and to keep as an active part of our lives. Because as we were doing our little preamble before we started recording, was a reminder to me of how incredibly profound and important curiosity is in our lives. What happens when we shut down our curiosity, when we say, oh no, like curiosity is kind of like a pastime. You can be curious about something in your pastime, but curiosity can actually, and there's an argument that it should actually be one of the main drivers of how we live our lives, not just some little, side hustle of our lives, but as a key focus of our lives.
Yeah.
Because our curiosity can provide us with tremendous focus.
Totally.
And I think that the problem happens when we undermine its value, when we think that our curiosity has to serve some goal that we know.
Yeah.
Some sort of thing that we're already on the path for. Whereas curiosity doesn't really work like that. It's kind of like, you don't know what's going to come out of this, but you're just supposed to head this way. You're just supposed to go down this direction because for some reason, this is very compelling and very interesting to you in this moment. But we often stop, we don't pursue it because we try and reason ourselves, for why we have to give ourselves a reason for pursuing something, because it's like curiosity isn't enough.
That's the thing. That's what we're told. I think that's the message that keeps getting kind of relayed to us, that, you don't want to waste time, and, you need to have a purpose, and you need to make progress. And if you're not making progress, you're wasting time. You're not getting anywhere. And I think that's what gets people stuck, actually. Ironically, the need to move is the very thing that gets you more stuck and stops you from moving.
Yeah.
If you do anything a lot, like if you work out a lot, if you practice something a lot, there'll always be a point where you're going to hit a plateau. At first, when you begin, when you don't really have a lot of the foundational skills, you'll have a tremendous growth. But there'll be a point where you plateau, and that's when you have to get creative. That's when you have to be, curious. Because, if you look at the best, say, athletes, what happens, I think, for the best athletes is when everybody else is plateauing, they're still curious. They're still going I wonder if I did this. I wonder if I tried that. I wonder if what would happen, And they develop the skills that where everyone else just kind of went, well, that's the job, that's the process. And then they don't advance.
Yes.
We were talking about this a little bit earlier. In any sport, there's a system. There's certain things that are predictable that will happen, and you need to have those skills. They put you in the right position, so you're where you need to be, so the game can play, so your team can rely on you and whatever. But once you're in position, once you got that down, that's when your creativity shows up. That's when your your ingenuity, your personhood, because not everybody is going to play that position the same. There are similar things that everyone needs to do, but there are things that you can do that are not predictable. They are, moment to moment based. And I think you're only going to find those out with curiosity and basically the willingness to wander, to wander around and wonder and try,
Yeah, and that's how we've made every great human discovery and breakthrough. It has been, I promise you, has been the result of curiosity. In any field, artistic, architectural, scientific, whatever it is, somebody got curious about something and saying, well, what if we tried something else out? Or what if we did something that's where you see interesting fusions where people find interesting inspirations from something completely outside of their own wheelhouse.
Right.
And they say, oh, look, we can apply the philosophy from that thing to this thing.
Right.
We find these things that kind of scale and we find new ways of doing things. But curiosity demands that we go into an unknown space where we don't know what the result of something is going to be. And not every curiosity that we have is going to what we would consider bear fruit.
Right.
Per se. It's not going to be something that will necessarily, we're like, oh, look at that. We had such huge success from this. Not everything is going to be like that. Some things might do that, but other things you'll pursue it to an extent, and then you go, okay, I've gotten what I needed out of that. But there's still something that you probably gained. You probably learned something. You maybe acquired a new skill. In something that you didn't have before. And that will lend itself to something else down the road that you can't even fathom or predict.
Well, one of the benefits of being, a human being and just the way our minds work is we're able to synthesize things. We're able to take two unrelated things and find parallels and find matches and find relatabilities. There you go, law of relationship. Curiosity can be something where you can find a relationship in something that no one else was able to see. And that very relationship is the thing that makes it new. I listen to a lot of some of the best writers talk about their process and how they come up with original stories and, why so many writers struggle with originality and what happens, why things end up being cliche. And, one of them, I forget who it was, but he was pointing out how, most of these stories, most of the stories you're going to tell are going to be the same story that's been told over and over again.
Yeah.
If you're trying to make that different, you're trying to make that unique, you're just constantly running into dead ends. But there's ways in which the same story can be told that gets brought out, gets synthesized in another way, which makes it new. And, I think curiosity is what makes you look into that. It's what makes you kind of go you can take something that seems very common and usual. Let's just say your position is, I'm telling a love story. There's many different ways to tell a love story. And you might tell a story that sounds the same as something else, but there's something in it that makes it unique.
Yeah.
And this all of a sudden, maybe that's not even the thing that made your story unique, but it was the linchpin thing that led to making something more unique. We were talking about this, I think it was you and I, but I was telling this at least to one of my clients. Look at every story. They're about very basic things. If you just summarize it all the way down, like you look at, say, the movie Fight Club, which is a favorite movie of mine. People go, well, what's this movie about? It's about, this and that, and get all these complicated answers. It's about friendship. Bottom line. It's about friendship. It's about two guys. Whatever. I don't want to ruin the story for people, but look, it's about a bond of men, really, relationship of men. And in some ways, I'm sure that can relate to women in many ways too. But at the end of the day, that's all it's about. Now you add in all these other little elements, these other little curious, wonderful paths, and all of a sudden it becomes this cult classic, amazing thing that's totally one of a kind. But it's like anything else. It's just a story about friendship. But it's not, right? But it is, but it's not. And curiosity is the thing that lets all these other little avenues and paths and wonderful things get added in.
Just on the topic of writing and writing as a craft, I saw this talk from, I can't remember the name of the author, but he's one of the best-selling authors of all time. Still living, still writing books. Patterson? Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. I watched the talk after you talked about it.
And it was so...
or Pattinson. I forget it. It was something like that.
But it was fantastic. It was Big Think, who posts wonderful things. He was talking about his process, his creative process for writing. And so he has a kind of a system, or I'd rather say it's like a platform that he works with that helps him kind of get the structure that he needs. But one of the parts that I loved about it is that he's like, he'll write like 5-6 different outlines before he even begins to write. So he'll outline the entire novel a bunch of times, and then he'll start writing it. And he says, and the end is almost never what I had outlined. The ending is always different, and he's just come to expect that, which I think is wonderful because that's curiosity.
Yeah.
It's him beginning from a place like, okay, this is what I have, and he sets out on it, but it's always, the creative process is always a journey. And in the midst of writing, he inevitably becomes fascinated by a certain character, or suddenly a little storyline that was going on has become much more interesting and fascinating. So he follows that curiosity. And by the time he comes to the end, he's like, well, it can't end this way. And now it's completely different.
Right.
Does that mean that his outline was a waste? Does that mean, no, not at all. Like it was just the platform. But then from there on, it's a continual exploration. It's continual curiosity about what is happening, and not what happened before, what's happening now.
Yeah.
And I think that this is such a beautiful thing about curiosity, is that it puts us into the present moment. It helps remove our expectations, these things of how we think things should be, how things should go, what we originally had in mind. It kind of says, well, maybe fuck it. maybe you don't have to, but what about this?
Yeah.
And if it's more exciting, then that's usually a good indication of that's the direction to go.
Right.
Follow the thing that's exciting. Follow this now. Follow this now. Follow this now. It keeps us open and receptive to everything that's available to us, like right now.
Mm-hmm. I think you pointed out a key element, which is follow what's exciting, what's fascinating, what's getting you going, and
that is curiosity.
Yeah,
really.
Don't worry about where this is going to lead you or what it is, and don't judge it. If you're interested in something, go down that path and follow that path. Mm-hmm. I've done some really interesting curiosity rabbit holes. For one, I got really interested into airsoft, which is basically paintball, but it's basically you're using like replica firearms, but they're not firearms. They shoot little plastic BBs, and it's like a sport, so you can shoot each other and no one gets hurt. It just feels like a bee sting. But it's not paintball because it doesn't leave a paint on you, but also these things have much longer range, and it's much more, they use them for like military simulation, but people play it as a sport. It's fun. But anyway, the reason why I got into it was because I wanted to make a military-esque movie. And so I needed to start researching like firearms and guns and military. And as I went down, that airsoft was this thing that kept coming up. And so then it became, oh, hey, look, we could buy or rent these airsoft things, and we could use them as the props on the thing. But I wanted the most realistic ones. So, the bolt cocks back, and, when you fire, it actually blows back and it gives a kick and gas goes out, So basically, I started learning a lot about firearms. I started learning a lot about airsoft. And the thing is that it taught me, because some of the pieces things broke, I would actually manually go in, I would look at blueprints, and I would fix them. I was just curious, how does this work? But I broke those things down to their smallest parts. This understanding how these things work has transformed not only my confidence, but my ability in other areas. Because now when I look at like mechanics, or I look having to put something together, I'm like, I can do this. If I can put that together, I can put this together. Because these are like, this is like, there's 200 parts, in some of these things, right? Or whatever. So if you break it all down and you figure out how to put that together, I mean, you're looking at an engine, you're looking at anything, you go, okay, great. This part does that, this part does that, this part does that. Same way it works in the airsoft gun or whatever. And you start to understand this curiosity created a skill set and an ability and an option for me, and plus many, many other things. But you don't know where this is going to pay off.
Yes.
That's the thing. Like, you might not
where
be able to,
or how or for what reason, but they will in some way. That's almost unquestionable. Even if you only
and it'll
pursue
pay off
something.
maybe indirectly. Like for example, it gave me confidence.
Yeah.
Maybe that was what it needed to teach me. Maybe it didn't need to teach me mechanics. Maybe it needed to teach me confidence about the smaller parts of a machine. So now, like, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure people have had this experience where something breaks down, like your car maybe, and you don't know how your car works, and you're like, fuck, what's wrong with it? I don't know. Like, and then you go to the mechanic and you're like, can you tell me? But if I learned how to break down a car as well. And starting to understand like what these parts do gives me confidence. I go, oh, if that's happening, this might be this, because now I have an idea, right? But curiosity is the thing that's going to lead you there, because I don't plan on being a mechanic and honestly don't care about taking cars apart. But just knowing, it's kind of a nice little skill to have.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, curiosity is really like, it's our interest in life.
Yes.
You know, it's kind of like what gets us going about life. That's really what curiosity is communicating to us. And from what I've researched and understand about curiosity itself is that there's no rational explanation that we have yet for curiosity. Why do we get curious about things? You know, it's actually, there's something that is illogical about the whole notion of it. So you kind of have to just move with that whole illogical notion. You just have to accept that that's the way of it. You say, it's like, okay, I'm curious about this thing. I don't know why I'm curious about this thing, why I'm interested in it. But the moment we begin to question it, and again, I know I'm covering territory we've already kind of covered, but when we start thinking of our curiosity in terms of what's going to be the result, what's going to be the payoff, what kind of progress am I going to get out of this, then we're kind of cooked.
Yeah.
In that regard, because curiosity requires you to abandon some of those things and instead lead with a little bit more trust and be like, you know what? I don't know how this is going to, like, what kind of progress and what kind of result, you know, what this is going to do for me, but it's going to do something. And I just don't know what that is. And that's also part of the beauty of curiosity in my mind, because so much of our lives we spend thinking about where we're getting to. Where is this going to get me? Where is this going to get me? Where is this going to get me? And we're constantly just thinking about some time in the future. And we're missing out on the life that is here now. And when we start stomping out on the life that we have now, we start to lose our exuberance for life. We start to lose our motivation. And in this way, curiosity can kind of be a cure for a lack of motivation. It's like, if you want to get motivated, get curious. You know, get curious about what you're curious about.
Yeah.
Really, because you might just find that if you're kind of in a rut, you're in a slump of something, you're just going through the motions of life. You know, that happens. You know that, and when that happens, is there something in your life that is interesting to you, that has been calling you, that has grasped your curiosity, that you have not seen through? I would say start there. Start there and invest in it. Go full on into it. See where that brings you, because it'll bring you somewhere.
Yeah.
It will bring you somewhere, but it definitely won't be that rut that you're in right now.
Yeah. You know, you're really, for me, you're singing to the choir, because that is so much about the experience I had, is where I started thinking, oh, okay, well, I'm at a certain age. I need to do these certain things in my life. I need to get to a certain place or achieve a certain thing. And, and definitely was feeling that pressure. And it did the weirdest thing. It had adverse effects on me, where I basically stopped being motivated, and I got worn out and I got burnt out and I wasn't excited about life and I was feeling more down. And what I found was really like, I think when you're not curious, a lot of the time the alternative is just worry and stress. Because you're constantly like living for a future that doesn't exist and may not exist. And here's the other thing. Disappointment is much more of a threat when you live in the future. If you live in the present, it's very difficult to be disappointed in the present, because the present is a response. There's not enough time to build up an expectation. You're just in it. So, but people feel depression, or not depression, but disappointment, I mean, and sometimes depression out of that. But disappointment, because you build up these expectations of how life's supposed to go, what progress is supposed to look like. And then you get there and maybe it doesn't work out. You know, maybe the relationship you had ends up not turning out, not working out. Maybe you get laid off from your job or fired or something, and then all of a sudden, maybe all of a sudden you have an unexpected kid on the way. All of a sudden, something happens.
Yeah.
And the thing is that you can be like, well, this is not to plan. But I think, to go back to the novelist we were talking about earlier, he has a good point. It's important to plan. Planning is have a vision, have an idea, have a direction, But at the same time, once you set that in motion, let go of it because it might become something else. Yeah. But it'll probably become something better. But if you try to make it what it is, what you initially thought. Look, when I was 17 and I was visioning my future as a filmmaker and actor, it looked way different.
Yeah.
But it was also based on a 17-year-old's opinion of what was the meaning of life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I've grown a lot. I've evolved a lot. And I go, man, like, that sure looked pretty, but I don't actually know if that was really, like, that would have given me the life that, you know what I mean? And the thing is, it's weird because, you go, well, if you had the money and the fame and the whatever, that would be happiness, right? But it's weird because you get older and you go, actually, shit, people are right. That's not what happiness is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is, one of my favorites is Alan Watts. He's one of my, if not my favorite philosopher thinker of modern times or all time for that matter. I was recently listening to a talk that he gave, and he brought up this point that he says, okay, well, let's say that, you could, whenever you went to sleep at night, that whatever you dreamed about, you could control your dreams. And there are people who can do this. There are people who can lucid dream, as they call it. But if you could, every single time you went to sleep, you were in complete control of what happened, everything that happened. And he said, for the first little while, he's like, you would, go on all kinds of adventures. You would have whatever you wanted. You would just, whatever it was that you wanted, it would be right there. It's like, but then after a little while, you'd probably start to put some challenges in your way. Something to overcome, because it's like it would get a little bit dull just start getting everything you wanted all the time. It's like, and then after putting some challenges in your way, you might even put yourself through like some real hard suffering, because it's just that it or create surprises. Everything would become so predictable and become very uninteresting. So you would actually, after a certain period of time, you would naturally want to create surprises and unexpected things to occur that would change your plans, because that keeps things fresh, that would keep things alive. Otherwise, things would get too dull. And I think that's part of curiosity can help us, I think, actually, with the challenges that we face.
Yeah.
I know that whenever I've had the mind to be curious, because there's something about curiosity that puts us into a playful kind of state, a playful, creative place. And whether it's an external challenge or an internal one, if I can, especially an internal one, where maybe something happens and I'm really triggered, I'm really angry about it, or something's made me upset. If I take the moment to go, oh, I wonder what that's all about. Like just questioning this response that I'm having. Say, oh, I wonder what this is, what this is. What's going on here with this? And suddenly I have a new relationship with this upset feeling that I have. And I'm not in a place anymore that's oh, I feel this way. I don't want to feel this way. And I want to, blame something. I want to attack something, whatever it is that I think has caused this upon me. And instead getting curious about it. And suddenly there's this whole landscape of very fascinating things. I start to uncover something about the way that I behave, the reason why I might be responding to a certain way. And then suddenly just kind of letting these things go and being like, oh, I don't need to be upset about this. I think a few years back, I had shared this one thing with you, which was I did when I went through a year of doing A Course in Miracles, which for anybody who isn't familiar, it was there was this book that was written, and it's like a year-long kind of thing, and you have sort of a lesson for the day that you try and incorporate into your life. And it's very challenging, not for everybody, but fascinating. And there was this one day where my lesson was something like, it was something along the lines of, I'm seeing attack wherever I look.
I remember when you were going through that lesson.
Yeah, and I was on I was on your way to your house.
Yeah.
When this happened, I was on your way to your house, and I was on the street, and I was approaching a walk light, and at an intersection, and in my head, I suddenly just went, God, the light's probably going to change on me before I get there. And the lesson of the day just like jumped into my head with that. And it's like, I'm seeing attack wherever I look. And it became so hysterical for me. The rest of your way walking to your place, I was just in such a light state after that. Like moved from a hyper agitated state to just feeling easy and and light about everything.
Right.
Because I just said, because it was the acknowledgement that it was crazy that I was feeling attacked by an inanimate object, but it was this thing of the world is against me. And instead it was like being curious about it, in a way I was kind of in a way directed to a curiosity about it and being like, whoa,
Well, how do I continually perceive the world as attacking me?
Yes.
This is the question, right? And then you start to go, I see a light as attacking me. Like I see a walk light. And then you see how ridiculous that is. And you go, well, shit, if I see a walk light as attacking me, what else do I see as attacking me?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden,
what am I in a rush to get to anyhow? Like, this isn't going to change like a huge thing. It's just not an important thing.
Right.
And you suddenly just get curious about how you think, how you behave, how you respond to certain things. And it can be such an enlightening process and growth. And it can completely, and to sort of quote or paraphrase something from A Course in Miracles, which is a change in perception is a miracle.
Yeah.
To a degree. Like it's like when we can flip our perception of something, like the example I just gave, it was a complete 180 on the direction that I was going on something so simple, and it happened in an instant.
Yeah.
In a moment. It took no time at all. It just happened. And that's something that curiosity can give us if we can think to apply it to whatever the circumstances are that we're being presented with.
Mm. Yeah, well, to talk about this perception shift, I mean, I'll just mention this because, I was going through something like several months ago, 3-4 months ago. I was working so hard. I was working from like 9 a.m. until the morning until like 11 at night, just all day, putting in hours. And then just sleeping, waking up, and maybe I was eating at my desk,
Yeah.
And I was just working. And I hit a point of just burnout. And the reason why I hit kind of a burnout point, and I took a few months off to kind of just be with myself and then start doing more things that I just enjoyed. That's what it evolved into. But the reason why I hit burnout was because I was trying so hard to make progress. And what I was finding was I was working all hours of the day, and I wasn't really getting the progress I wanted. I wasn't getting the results I wanted, and it just kind of wore me down. I was just like, hey, well, forget it. I don't want to do this. This isn't fun. This isn't rewarding. And so these last few months, and I've talked about this on some previous episodes, but the last few months I decided, okay, just do whatever it is that you want to do for a few months here. If you want to go for a hike, you go for a hike. If you want to go grab a coffee, go get a coffee. You want to play some video games, play some video games. And so, I started doing all these things, and video games were one of those things that kind of popped up for me. I started playing video games, and I started kind of just having fun playing video games. And I was like, I like this. This is enjoyable. This is a good time. And I had this awareness recently, although this has been something that's been kind of compounding over a while. But I was like, well, what if life is just a video game? What if it's just like a game, right? Mm-hmm. And like, what do I like about these games so much? Because, you know, why do I keep wanting to play, say, a certain game over and over? Well, you know, you level up your character, you get more rewards, you kind of, in certain games, you can measure your stats and you can see your stats are getting better, and that's kind of rewarding and whatnot. And I was thinking about, you know, life is not much unlike that. The thing is what works about this game is it's very, very specific. I have a very specific job that I'm trying to do, a very specific goal with very specific results, and there's very specific progress or reward points. And I was like, what was failing for me before was when I was working all hours of the day, I wasn't playing a specific game. I didn't have a specific way of reward. So it was kind of this kind of big end goal, like, you know, make lots of money, build an empire, you know, which is something that might take a lifetime. Whereas, you know, you're not going to get those immediate results. But what results I could get is, you know, I don't know, build this web page or build this website out to this point. And then once that job is done, then market to these people, get 100 people to like look at your website or get involved or sign up or whatever. Then the marketing. Then the next step is sell like 10 of those people or 20 of those people or 2 of them into whatever it is that you're doing. But do those one at a time. Because when you're playing a game, you're playing a level, you're playing a thing, you're doing one thing at a time. And here's the thing. The curiosity of playing games led me to the realization of how I can actually perform better in my life if I look at it like the games I'm playing. You see, you don't really know, because it seems like playing video games is just a big waste of time. You know, it's like you're not working, you're wasting your time. But it's like, actually, that was a key element because it helped me shift my perception around how I do my life. Because life is just an open-ended game. You need to set the rules and the boundaries. You need to be specific about it. But it kind of, for me, I needed to go play some video games and come back and apply that to life. You know what I mean?
Which is like one of the things where it's like it would be easy to look at that and being like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, I'm wasting my time.
Yeah.
It would be a huge thing with which is why you mentioned early to start off with was not to judge what you're curious about.
Yes.
You know, it's like if you're curious about it, you're curious about it. Go and check it out. Go and like look into it. Follow that thing. Follow that thread to wherever it's going to go.
Yeah.
Right? And then you'll arrive to making a new call, finding probably a new curiosity, a new direction to take. But if you judge whatever it is that comes up, then you're just going to stay where you're at. You know, you're not creating any movement.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's such a great thing. You know, sometimes I'm not really a big person on the word motivation. You know, there's so much baggage tied up into it. For me, I prefer movement. You know, it's like being part of a movement. What is the movement? And to me, curiosity, and that's how it relates to process in this whole thing, is that it is a crucial part of process, it's a crucial part of creating movement and how we create movement, knowing what direction to take. It's like it's which is why we call this one, you know, curiosity as your compass.
Yeah.
Right? Like
it directs you. It gives you a direction to go. Like if you were if we just left you in the middle of somewhere in the world and we said like, look, there's going to be a pull somewhere in your heart, somewhere in your body, and it's going to kind of be in a direction. Just follow whatever your heart is telling you to go. Your heart will like kind of lead you like a magnet. That's what curiosity is like. It's like you got this little magnetism somewhere in the world and you're like, oh, I want to go over there. Go over there. Because somewhere over there is going to give you a perspective on something to be able to see something else, and you might change direction when you get a little ways down that direction. But you need to go over there to see whatever it is you need to see. And don't get so stuck on like, well, I'm walking north, so it's north forever. No, maybe not. Maybe just north for now. And then it'll be northeast. And then at some point, who knows? It'll be like,
Maybe you're heading back south.
whatever, and you might be heading back. But the thing is you needed to go out there to get that bit of information to come back to where you were to use that information. And curiosity is what's going to get you to go into the unknown and go into places that you wouldn't normally go. And you're going to gather intel, gather reconnaissance about the world, about yourself, about people, and you're going to come back. And like, this is why storytellers exist. Storytellers go out in the world, fucking live, and have some crazy shit happen, and then we come back to the tribe and we go, I got a story for you. And listen, for this, so I don't have to like talk about this tribe or that person. I'm going to change the names and do the thing. But here's the thing. This is the story. This is what I learned. But if you never went out there and had that experience, you wouldn't be able to come back and tell the story.
And that's the word right there that's been going off in my head as you've been talking is experience.
Right.
It's like not necessarily like, going out and collecting and like you're going out on a mission. It's really you're going out to see and have an experience. And that experience becomes a part of who you are.
Yes.
And in ways that we can't even comprehend. I think this is part of the tricky thing of it is we just so often we don't comprehend the things that we've experienced and how they've made us wiser, and how they've made us richer, I guess, as well in our experience until we have a moment where we go, oh shit, I understand that because of this one thing that I had happen, when I was off doing this thing this one time in my life, which I thought was stupid. Maybe I judged as stupid at one point in time, but now I'm seeing, I'm like, oh shit, I actually know what this is about, and it's come in handy at this point in time. It's not even necessarily about having, tools at our disposal at some point in time. It really is very often just about being human. Yeah. Curiosity is such a beautiful, humanizing thing for us. It's how we can really take in life to its fullest to a large degree.
It's very expansive. I think that's the key thing is like, it's about expanding yourself and it's about finding territory too, because curiosity, like if you were put in the middle of a map, again, let's use this example, and I said, look, this is your land. Everything as far as you can see is yours. Wouldn't you walk to the edge and go find out where your boundaries are? Like I would. I wouldn't just sit in the middle and go, oh yeah, like way out there is a mountain. I want to go see them damn mountain. I want to go climb it and find out what it's like over there. I'm not just going to sit in one spot. And I think what happens is people go, oh, I'm not motivated. I'm stuck. Life sucks. It's like you have a whole expansive world around you that's your territory, and you're not even exploring a fraction of it with any curiosity. What do you expect?
Yeah. And that's not just outer, that's an inner thing too.
Yeah.
Like
it's
again,
a metaphor.
it's just like if you're in that place, you're just like, I'm not motivated. It's just like, well then like, what are you curious about?
Right.
Like again, get curious about your curiosities and follow one of them through and see where that takes you. And then the next one, see where that takes you and where the next one takes you. I mean, just to add another kind of dynamic to this, one of my favorite things is travel.
Yes.
I love travel. And curiosity, as I'm realizing, is a huge part of that. I mean, for one, there's the place that you've decided to go to because you're probably curious about, I wonder what things are like in this part of the world.
Yeah.
Right? So you head off there. But it's not just that you head off to Paris or something like that. So you get to Paris, but now you're in Paris. It's like, well, what are you curious about in Paris? It's like, well, I want to know what this place is like. And I want to know what it's like to sit in a nice restaurant in Paris. I want to know what it's like, that it just builds off. And that's, if anybody out there who's listening to this, if you've traveled, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. You're in this state of aliveness when you travel. For many people, at least, unless there are some people who are just
unless you just
not
go to
great
a resort
travelers
and drink and you don't leave.
Yeah, but if you love to just go and sightsee and experience a new place, then just how extraordinary and how alive you feel when you're just out seeing, just out seeing what's there, and following. You're so often just following your curiosity. Oh, like I want to go and see this place, and then maybe you run into a local, and it's just like, oh, you have to go. This place is beautiful. It's when it's just like, oh, okay, now I'm curious about this, and you just go. You don't think about it.
Yeah.
You know, like there's so little thinking about it. You're just going, you're just following it. And somewhere you're like, that wasn't as great as I thought. And you move on.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yes.
Right? Like you just move on and you follow the next thing that you're curious about. And the next thing, and then you come back and you go, wow, what a trip.
Well, and then, you'll have experiences that in that there's a chance of having an experience that you would have never had if you follow that curiosity and let that lead you somewhere. And I think you pointed out a really great point, is that curiosity begets more curiosity. That's the thing, is like there's
a never-ending stream of it.
Exactly. You might be not curious about much right now, but maybe there's one little thing. Like, for me, I remember a time where I just like all of a sudden I just got really interested in remote control cars. And I just was like fascinated with them. I'm just like, they're so cool. And I never really had one. My brothers each had one, but I was so young that they didn't give me one. My parents, those people.
Yeah.
They didn't give me one. So, so I always kind of longed for a remote control car. And then, I got a little older and I'm like, I've always wanted a remote control car. And I'm just like, I'm gonna get one, but I'm gonna get an awesome one. So I started researching it. I went to an actual legitimate RC shop and I'm asking the guy questions, and I started finding out about all the intricate inner workings that you can actually do. And I have a 65 mile per hour remote control car that when I want to have some fun, I can just take out and go for a boot, right? And it's fun. But the thing is that curiosity got me motivated, got me out of the house, got me doing something, which led to other really cool things. And I mean, I could take you down the rabbit hole, but it's just that sometimes you're going to have like one weird little thing. That's why I think everybody should have like a hobby. And maybe it's a hobby you have it's a fad. It's like something you have for a very short period of time, but that will get you somewhere. And then you might find out the thing that you're actually interested in.
Yes.
There's something I want to mention, because I know we're getting close to the end of this, but I want to bring this into the thing because, people are probably going, well, curiosity killed the cat. And we want to talk about the the toxic side of curiosity, or the recklessness of curiosity.
Yes.
And I think there's a certain amount of recklessness that's needed. You need to be a little bit kind of like, well, fuck it, let's just go find out, But I think there's a certain point where when you are curious, but it will cause your own detriment, but better. And that's when you need to kind of draw a line. And the best way I can relate this is like, maybe it's dating a person that is going to end in it's not going to end well, but you do it anyway, but better. The first time you do it, fine. You get a pass. You learn some lessons. But if you keep dating the wrong people, knowing that you're dating the wrong people, halfway through trying to change it and transform it into something, there's a curiosity about like where you keep setting yourself up for destruction or disaster. And that's not, I think, the curiosity we're talking about, but I think it's an important side to mention, because I think sometimes people, they toxify curiosity for themselves because they keep doing things that are curious but reckless.
Yeah. One area that I can think of specifically for this one, from like what I have seen from people, one area where this happens a lot is psychedelics. I've seen people who have recklessly gone, they're curious. They're curious about like, oh, I wonder what, what doing a lot of mushrooms is like, what ayahuasca is like, what, acid is like, all of these things. And, just to be completely transparent, I'm not against these things whatsoever. I think that, people should be allowed to do these things, but it's how you're going about it. And I've seen people do it very recklessly. It's like, if you're going to do it, great, but make sure you're look into it. Make sure you're doing this kind of thing safely, because people have had very, very bad experiences that could have been avoided. It's like, go and explore that curiosity. I'm not going to say, no, don't go and do that. If you're really curious about it, I would encourage you to see it through, but see it through the proper channels.
Yeah.
You know, like, because there are certain things that we could be curious about that pose a potential risk or pose a potential danger. That doesn't mean it's not worth going through, but it does mean that there's to err a certain level of caution.
Yes.
You know, see it through, but proceed with caution.
Yeah.
But that's a very different thing. You know, that's something.
And it's a tolerance level. You know, everybody's got to figure out their own tolerance level at how risk averse are you and how risk willing are you. You know, and one of my main rules, and I've said this on previous episodes, when it comes to curiosity or venturing out or taking a risk, you know, your physical health is always a consideration. Mm-hmm. You always need to keep that in mind. And also...
And other people's health.
Yes, and other people's. And, you know, the other thing that I would also say is not just physical health, but your social environment is so vitally important. It's arguably, in my opinion, one of the most important things that is not talked about enough. But the people you surround yourself with when you go do something is a very important decision to make. So look, like if you want to go do ayahuasca, go do it with a recognized shaman or somebody who is referred. Research it, look into it. Just maybe find some testimonials if you can. Yeah. Talk to somebody who's done it. You know. But if you go and you want to do like some kind of, something like that, and you want to go do it with a bunch of people that have addictions and things like that, and they're just going, yeah, we're going to go off in the woods and do it ourselves, maybe that's not the right group to do that, because maybe that thing isn't bad, but maybe these people are in a toxic place, and you're not safe necessarily with them. You know, the whole reason why they would have a shaman is so that someone's there to look after everybody. Someone's there to kind of keep it safe.
There's someone who has experience who's, to keep everyone safe so that things don't get out of hand, and that if you need help, that somebody will be there to help you.
Right. And then you might be going through a difficult experience in whatever, you know, if you're doing something like that. And I mean, we could be talking about cliff jumping. We could be talking about driving a fast sports car, anything. But the people you surround yourself with can very much influence the things you do. Yeah. You know, cliff jumping, whatever. And if you're hanging around people that are encouraging you to do like super dangerous stuff and they're not considering your health and they're just like, yeah, let's just see what happens. Like, that's not the right group to be around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And for the most part, I would say like curiosity is a wonderful thing, because there's a difference between, I'm curious about, you know, trying a psychedelic and having a psychedelic experience. Yeah. There's a difference between that and saying, I'm interested in picking up guitar. Like, it's
totally.
Like it's
a little different.
It's a little different. You know, there's a sort of risk assessment that can be involved. It's like, okay, is there a potential danger to myself, to others, or to, you know, my environment by me doing this? And if it's no, then just just go for it.
Right.
If it's like, okay, there is a potential risk, there's a potential danger, then maybe take a moment to think everything really well through. I'm not going to say stop, because I don't think you should, because when we sit on our curiosities, I think we just start to kill ourselves a little bit. It's just like a weird way of just robbing ourselves of living really vibrant lives.
It's that, you know, so I studied a lot of philosophy when I was going through my first few years in university. And one of the things about philosophy in one of the courses, or a few of the courses we were talking and doing, we talked about kind of these cliche statements like look before you leap. Mm-hmm. Those who hesitate are lost. Two very true yet contradicting wisdoms. Yeah. So there's a time when you need to look before you leap. And there is a time where, you know, hesitation will lose you whatever it is you're trying to get.
Yeah.
But you need to make that decision. And in the moment, you kind of go, is this a moment where it's danger? If it's danger, look before you leap.
Yeah.
Figure out your danger, figure out your safety. But if it's a moment where it's like, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? Yeah. Someone's going to say no to me. That's a don't hesitate. That's a go for it. That's a find out. You know what I mean? Because nothing like, and your ego getting hurt is a good thing. Yeah. Your physical health getting hurt is not a good thing.
Yeah.
And you need to kind of draw that line for yourself. And I think curiosity, you know, sometimes is expressed by leaping in, and sometimes it's best expressed by doing your research first and figuring a few things out. but you're going to have to make that decision. And that's a moment to moment thing. You know, I would love to just say, yeah, just jump in, but we have to acknowledge that there are dangers in this world. You know, there are physical dangers, there are social dangers, emotional dangers, psychological dangers, and we need to consider that to some degree. But I think here's the other thing. Keep this in mind, and I'm just sharing this with you, with myself, with the whole audience, you know, for all of us. The more risks you take, the better you'll be at taking risks. So if you're not a big risk taker right now, you risk a little bit more and you push your threshold. You don't have to go from 0 to 100 in like a second. So if someone else is a way bigger risk taker, they probably earned that and developed that, or they're doing it out of just kind of, they're trying to prove something, or it's kind of stupid, right?
Yeah.
And it's reckless. But you can take massive risks and not be reckless. But, you know, it might mean not going from 0 to 100 in a second. It might mean taking a few smaller risks to get your threshold of experience up so that you can do it. You know, I think curiosity can become reckless when we just say, well, fuck it, nothing matters. You know, I guarantee you push anybody, even the most depressed person, you push them far enough, something matters. Something matters. You know, and actually they say most people who have survived a suicide attempt, the moment after they jump off a bridge, or the moment just after they do it, they have immediate regret. Because that's the moment where you realize something mattered. But it took that point. And there's a guy who actually talks about it. You know, they talk about the odds of people actually survive their attempts from like jumping and stuff like that. And he's like, the moment I jumped, I regretted it. But it was too late. And then he ended up surviving. And he was like,
wow.
And now his whole life is like changed. But he's like, it's a miracle I survived because it took me that point. And he says there's been effects for that, though. He's like, every time my dad gets a call about me or from me or whatever, he's like, immediately he's like, is my son in trouble? And he's like, there's effects from my actions that have caused damages. So when you go and you push and you take and you do stuff, saying whatever, there are effects that are not just you. So you always want to consider, like, is this going to hurt me? Is it going to hurt anybody else? Is it going to damage some shit that I can't repair? Those are things to consider.
What this for me brings up like a whole other side of curiosity and how it can transform certain aspects of our lives, which is, and I think that this is very pertinent for the time that we are in now, is being curious about other people's experiences, about other people's sort of thoughts on life, other people's opinions about things. You know, we live in a very reflexive sort of world right now where it's very hard to find common ground very often with people, and to be able to disagree with people. And it's good to find people that we disagree with, you know, because they're within every disagreement that we have with someone, there's an opportunity to learn something. And we so often come into these situations with a sense of digging our heels in and putting the defenses up, you know, and getting ready to attack, when really curiosity can transform that whole thing. It's like, well, it's like, I'm interested. Tell me about this position that you have. Oh, okay, interesting. So, but what about something like this? What about, you know, if you get curious, you can start asking questions, and you can maybe start to understand where someone is coming from. And you might see something in a new way that you hadn't considered before. And with that, you might validate a place that you already stand. You might not change anything, but you have to be open and curious about it, and you in many ways have to put your thoughts to the test. You know, curiosity sometimes is a voluntary action of saying, like, okay, like this is up for debate, this is up for challenge, and it may or may not change, you know, but to say I'm not, curiosity removes kind of the threat of what's going on, because of the openness that it implies, that comes with it. And in listening and being aware of, or at least allowing ourselves to be more aware of other people's realities, we might then be able to better make a case for our own position.
Mm-hmm.
And because we were at least open to hearing somebody else, then maybe they might be a little bit more open to where we're coming from.
Right.
So that was just like
That's a
another
really-
little kind of side note to this curiosity. It just that came to my mind as you were talking there.
It's great. It's so important. That's such an important part of curiosity, I think, just for helping people communicate and empathize and get to understand each other. I think having instead of being so opinionated and being like, I know, and this is the way, consider like anything else that works in the world. Like if anybody else is, if anything stands for, especially for a long period of time, if it stands for a long period of time, like let's just say politics, right and left or whatever, the left, the progressive, the right, the conservative, conservative, for those who are not too into politics, let's just say conservative is kind of keeping things as they are. Progressive, left is a little bit of evolving with the times and changing. Both are important. Mm-hmm. There's certain things that have been built that we don't want to just throw away.
Yeah.
But there's other things in which we could use a little change and a little evolution. But I think people are like, I'm left, I'm right, I'm whatever. It's like the more left you are, the more you need to understand why people are right. Like it's the more, it's a spectrum. And I think the thing is curiosity is sometimes one of those things where sometimes it's good to be curious about things that you don't necessarily agree with. Mm-hmm. Because that will actually make you not only a better person, but it will actually help you work a lot of things out that seem like just piss-offs or things that don't work or blocks.
It might help you
right?
just understand the problem more objectively.
Yeah.
Right. And just to touch on that, it's just like, you're talking about left and right, change and stability. It's like change, they're sides of the same coin.
Totally.
One does not exist without the other.
Well, how do you have change if there's no stability?
Yeah.
How do you have stability
if there's no change?
So we all,
they're inseparable.
Right. We all, what do we want? We all want to be healthy. We all want to be happy. We most of us, for the most part, we want peace with each other. We want to figure out how to work together and kind of, but there's things we have little disagreements. And the thing is like, instead of getting pissed off because someone doesn't agree with you, just be curious and go like, well, why? Because like, what in your world makes that not make sense?
Yeah.
And like, maybe the way you're thinking, this is great, and this happens, is you might go, geez, the way I was thinking was actually kind of, I don't agree with it as much anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's not about being swayed. It's just about getting more information.
Yeah, it's not about being right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's about accepting the fact that, we're all learning and growing and evolving human beings, learning to be more human.
Yes.
Really.
We weren't born with all the answers.
Yeah.
That's why we have podcasts. So
Yeah.
we kind of poke fun at a few,
Yeah. Well, let's start to
Close
close this
it up.
one out here.
I like it.
So we've been drinking a beer, as we always do, as tradition on the podcast, spurs on the conversation. We are not sponsored at this moment in time, so we're just drinking this. So anything that you hear us say here is just us talking freely.
Yeah. We have beers, they spur on the conversation, and we keep doing it.
And this is from Steamworks Brewing in Vancouver, British Columbia, and this is their winter lager.
It's good. It's definitely got that. I can see why it's a winter lager. It's got like almost like an ale element to it. It's like a heavierness to it, Although it is obviously a lager, it's I think with winter beers you always there's this tendency for them to be a little bit more darker, or a little bit more heavier.
Yeah.
It's when it's
For the
a summer
cold
beer.
weather.
Yeah, exactly. When the summer they're much more lighter and
Yeah.
it's just how it goes. But
Yeah, this has been...
it's been good brew.
It's been good, yeah.
They have fun little
this.
marketing on their bottles and stuff.
Yeah, they've got kind of a nice aesthetic.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so let's wrap all this up. Give some people some things to maybe take away and call it a day.
Yeah.
Okay, my final thoughts are this. Just look, be curious. Figure out whatever you're curious about, whatever this magnetism is inside of you. Go down that road, whatever it is. Just kind of venture down it. And when I say venture down it, some things you can jump right in. You can just go do it. Other things, start with research. But whatever you're curious about, go down that road. If for example, it's going to put your health in danger, or it's going to empty your bank account, maybe do a little research first.
Yeah.
Before you buy that car or whatever you're about to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or you're going to jump off a cliff and risk your life. But if it's kind of one of those things where it's I really have this urge to play video games, or like I did, or I have this urge to start guitar, you can get a basic, simple guitar for $100, and you can start with that one. I know you're looking at the Fender on the wall, and it's $10,000. Maybe save that for less than $100. But whatever, it's up to you. It's all relative. But the thing is you got to follow it down, and don't look at it as a waste of time. Look at it as an expansive thing that's helping you find your territory, and it may not lead anywhere directly, but indirectly might show you something important. And the side of that's just don't be reckless when you do things. Don't put your health or other people's health in danger. Don't break other people's shit. Mm-hmm. And if you kind of follow those rules, I think curiosity can lead you to wonderful places where you'll find more territory in your world, and you'll be expansive, and it will add to your whole repertoire of what you can do creatively and everything in life.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
That's what I got.
My takeaway from this, and how I would like to wrap this one up, is for myself, this is as much for myself as for anybody who's listening, is clear a big space for curiosity in your life. Give it lots of room to work and move and play in your life. If you've been doing it already, then fantastic. Then you know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't been honoring your curiosity, it's time to start doing that again, because I think you're going to start to find a lot of ease, a lot of flow, a lot of play, a kind of childlike quality and fascination with the world start to creep back into your life. And it doesn't have to, quote unquote, go anywhere. In fact, it's a beautiful thing for it not to be, to not have any idea of that in your head, but to just pursue something for its own sake, just because you're curious, just because you wonder. Allow yourself some wonder. It's the same kind of thing. Curiosity, wonder, it's allow that back into your life. Create a big space in yourself for that to exist again, because I believe it has absolutely profound power to completely transform our lives. Thanks for listening to the show. If you got something out of this, if you feel it improved your life or your journey in any way, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, or share the episode.
You can also support us on Patreon, where we have tons of great bonuses. You are the ones that make the show possible and help us to thrive. Thank you for joining us.